Well, thanks everyone for joining. I'm Lauren Olson with the Junior League of Lake Charles. I'm filling in for Neely this week as she is out. And I wanted to thank everyone for coming on week after week and for our 5th session. And as you saw, this one's about events. So I know it's one I'm excited about. So I hope everyone else is. And thanks again to the Community Foundation for partnering with the Junior League so we can offer this training to the community. And now rolling over to Sarah to introduce our guest.
Awesome. Well, yes, we are so happy to have so many people joining us again today. 5 of our virtual training sessions. And as we've done before, I want to share a few highlights that you all shared in the surveys that you completed from our last week's session on the annual fund and annual giving. And it was really nice to have Mike Beard, the CEO of the Boy Scouts, along with Frank McNamara, one of their longtime board members, and share with us. And they both, I think, just offered so much great practical knowledge. And that's part of what you all took away from it, was the appreciation for real boots on the ground, how to. And so it's really exciting because today we'll get more of that related to events, and particularly virtual events. A couple of other things that you all took away. One thing that I remember Mike shared was that their organization is volunteer driven and professionally supported. So we're not all in exactly that situation, but many nonprofits are. So that was a takeaway for several folks on here. Another was a specific of asking a donor for a commitment of giving for 3 years in a row, and asking them when during the year they would like to receive their invoice or reminder for that pledge. So that's really important as well. And another one that I think we all took away was to think big. Sometimes we get in our own little box of what's doable for our own organization, and somebody had this in all caps: think big. So remind us all to do that, especially as we learn more today. So now I'll turn to introducing our panelists that Beverly has worked with in the Baton Rouge community on different projects. And so we are so appreciative, Beverly, of you inviting them to join us today. One is Melissa Curry, who is a philanthropy officer with the Foundation for Women's Hospital. She works on strategic planning and successful implementation and overall accountability of all activities related to fundraising for the foundation. So that's a really wide overview there, a big bucket that she is responsible for. And in that, she and the team have raised over $2.4 million for Women's Hospital. So obviously some really successful strategies that they've implemented there. She also works with their annual giving programs, including recruitment and retention of volunteers and stewardship of annual giving and major donors. And I know those are all things that we've touched on in our session, so I look forward to us being able to ask some questions related to that of Melissa. She's also active in her community in a couple of different ways that are important to those of us on the call. She's a sustaining member of the Junior League of Baton Rouge and also a member of the Association of Fundraising Professionals. So a lot of us are involved in those organizations, and we appreciate that. Also, we have joining us Shelton Jones. She's the executive director of the Emerge Foundation. And our community foundation is familiar with that because the Baton Rouge Area Foundation, with whom we partner, was very instrumental in creating the Emerge Foundation, or the Emerge Center in Baton Rouge. And I remember early on, one of the organizations here that they met with was our St. Nicholas Center. So it's going to be real interesting to hear from them and how they've progressed and what Shelton's role is now as the executive director of their foundation. She's been involved in their community and nonprofit development and fundraising for more than a decade. She served as capital campaign coordinator for the Baton Rouge Speech and Hearing Foundation and the Emerge Center from 2011 to 2014. So she managed donor outreach, campaign events, communications, and donor recognition. And then for the next 3 years, she was with Our Lady of the Lake Foundation, excuse me, and managed their first capital campaign and also became a major gifts officer. She then in 2017 returned to Emerge to launch their foundation and serve as its executive director. So I think with her experience as well, it's going to be very relatable for what many of us are doing. And we look forward to hearing from both Melissa and Shelton after Beverly does some training with us. And I think we all know Beverly really well by now. And know that she is a rock star in the world of philanthropy, both working with people like us that are staff and development officers in nonprofits, working with board members, working with families that want to give back to their community both now and creating funds that support their communities and causes that matter forever. So Beverly really does check all the boxes related to philanthropy, and we're so happy that you've been sharing your expertise with us, and we look forward to learning more today.
Well, thank you so much. I am tickled to be back with you, and I have to tell you, I appreciate so much the kudos, but we're only as good as fundraisers and fundraising consultants as the people that we get to work with and have worked with in the past and from our experience. And I have to tell you, of all of the sessions, I am most excited about this one because I get to highlight two incredible causes that I am very passionate about. And really in the country, you know, I work coast to coast. There, it's rare that you get to say this, but two of the best and most accomplished professionals in their field are Shelton Jones and Melissa Curry, and they're professionals that I look to watch what they're doing and seek counsel and advice from and get to share ideas with. So I can't wait for you to hear from them. And we're going to walk through the training. I'm going to go through the best practices of events and online fundraising, but since so much of what we're going to talk about this evening is a little bit of a repeat as far as the core tenets of fundraising, I really want to get to the meat and let you all have the opportunity to visit with and hear from Melissa and Shelton and the great work that they do. You might remember from my bio that I was the president of the Foundation for Women's at Women's Hospital, and I had the incredible pleasure to work with Melissa side by side. And in that time, it happened to be when Shelton was at the Children's Hospital, and there's just a tremendous partnership and synergy with both the Children's Hospital at Women's Hospital and the Emerge Center, because so many of the kids that come out of the NICU wind up at the Emerge Center over a long period of time, and both are just jewels in the community. They also represent very different size organizations and types of organizations, so we'll get to talk about that. And Shelton and the Emerge Center has really done their big event for the year. They were one of the big first in the area to go through the decision-making process of what do we do in light of pandemic. And Melissa and her team are looking to the future. So they've got two big events coming up that have been really wildly successful over time that they're really having to pivot with. So I thought it would be fun to have the bookends. We've done it, we've been there, we've done that, and this is what went well and what might be different. And then hearing from Melissa about this is how we're changing on a day-to-day basis and moving forward. But before we do all that, let's talk a little bit about best practices in events and online fundraising. You all know Carter works across the globe, literally, in this space, and We are major gift and capital campaign fundraisers, but and we also work deeply in the annual fund space. Events are a natural piece of just about everything that happens at every organization that we get to, whether it's organizations looking to maximize their donor acquisition or donor upgrade or stewarding their donors. Whether you want to do events or online fundraising, it is a it's an or not, it's a necessary part of what we do in global philanthropy, and each organization has its unique culture and unique needs. So moving forward, y'all will remember our pyramid of giving. I know you might be a little tired of seeing this, but fundamentals of fundraising does not change regardless of where you are in the pyramid. But I want to show you this over and over, and tonight we're what we would call at the bottom of the pyramid. Generally, when you're doing events and online fundraising, of course, they integrate throughout this entire pyramid. Different events are for different purposes, and we'll talk about that. But generally, they are around for donor acquisition. So you're trying to acquire new donors and first-time givers, or you're trying to move somebody up the annual giving pyramid, engage them in a different way. When you get into the stewardship piece of events, it's really about how are we recognizing and stewarding donors towards possibly a campaign or thanking them for a major gift. But generally speaking, when we talk about events, we're at the bottom of the pyramid. And online fundraising integrates with all of these. And it's a little bit different, so I'm gonna hold that thought for a second. But looking at the pyramid a little bit differently, a different view of this events, again, you're trying to acquire new donors. You're absolutely trying to increase the participation with those donors and your volunteers with your organization. And you're really trying to understand the why of why donors would give to you. So it's a large breadth across the bottom, and the size of the gift generally increases as you go up that pyramid. So just a gentle reminder that this is where we are in the pyramid. Now, the ladder of effectiveness that y'all have seen before is applicable, and you'll see from media advertising going up this. Fundraising, benefit, and event is really about in the middle of the effectiveness of fundraising. So like we talked last time, you might have product sales or earned income. I have a client that has a gift shop attached, and sometimes those are nice and door to door, very infrequent in our world. But if you are selling popcorn or cookies like the Girl Scouts, that might be something that you do. Letters are next, but fundraising, benefits, and events really get into what we call the meat of fundraising, where you're trying to acquire donors, and actually there's dollars, there are dollars attached that can help move your mission up. So a reminder of the donor continuum. I want to remind you of this because we're going to refer to it in a moment. The donor continuum, you'll remember that it begins here with the identify and qualify. We're always trying to identify new donors and qualify them. And what that means is, do they have linkage? Do they have capacity? And do they have an interest in our mission? Or are they just showing up to because a friend invited them? So we're trying to identify those people. We're trying to get them into our donor file and qualify them. And over time, building a trust relationship, locating their passion, matching philanthropic passions, and then going forward. Events are very important in this because it gives you an opportunity to engage donors in sometimes a really fun way. It also gives you an opportunity to engage donors into a volunteer or leadership culture with you, to get them involved in the planning process, to help them help you make decisions. And from there, very frequently you hear their stories, you're able to locate their passions, and hopefully move them to more of a major giving capacity. Now, you'll remember, it's not about the money. It's all about the meaning and the meaning to the donor. So any way that you can engage them, have them tell their story, have them speak their truth, if you will, about why they're involved with you and why they're donating, and the mission that you're trying to propagate, then all the better. So let's move deep into events. Why do we do special events, and what makes them effective? Well, events themselves are most effective when they are a tool to achieve the organization's mission. Every single time I'm with a client and they say, I want to do an event, you have to ask the reason why. Is it central to your mission? And believe it or not, upon evaluation, that first question, very frequently people will decide not to do an event because it's really not who they are, representative of what their organization does. So first and foremost, it's got to be a tool to achieve your mission in some way, shape, or form. It's got to have a clearly defined purpose. It's got to have goals, and it has to have objectives. And I would say right now, specifically in the uncertain times that we are dealing with, that without a purpose, without specific goals, and without achievable objectives, many events may not happen in the foreseeable future. You also have to have adequate resources. Very frequently, boards will say, we should do a gala or we should do an event. And the first question is, okay, who's going to run it? Do you want me to raise money, or do you want me to get auction items? Do you want me to manage volunteers? And when you put pen to paper and really add up, not just what is it going to, how much money do you want to raise, but what is the time that is going to be spent, and what are the resources that are going to be spent on an event. You have to make sure that you include those. Do we have adequate volunteer and staff to make this happen? And is it built into the overall fund development program? Events for event's sake are generally not very effective. An event that has specific purpose, goals, and objectives within the other pieces of your program can be extraordinarily effective. So for example, if you're doing an event for donor acquisition, do you have measurable and specific numbers that you're trying to achieve? And are you satisfied with maybe not raising as much money, but acquiring a certain number or percentage of new people into your file? Or is your event about stewardship? Are you willing to spend the money without necessarily having a tremendous amount of money coming in, just to engage and thank people? You have to have those objectives and goals defined before you go into it. Otherwise, you won't be able to evaluate your success. And I will tell you, every event can't do all of the things. So what does that mean? Why do we conduct it? Well, when you sit down to say, are we going to do this event, or should we do this event? Generally, events fall into specific categories. Are we doing this to identify new prospects? Donor acquisition is a good enough reason to do it, but you better be identifying a tremendous number of prospects, because donor acquisition costs a lot of money to produce. Are you doing the event to cultivate existing donors and volunteers? Is this a way to engage your donors? Now, those two can be coupled together. Donor engagement and donor acquisition can certainly be coupled. And an example would be, maybe you do an event, and what you're trying to do is get as many people as possible in the door, but you have some highlighted speakers and donor stories and that sort of thing, or people that are helping you lead the event. It helps you get them more engaged and deeply involved in your organization. Another way to do an event is to express appreciation and donor recognition. Of course, the stewardship. Are we having a gala to thank our donors, to honor our heroes, for example, where you give out the awards, you say nice things about your particular donors, and it's an engagement tool, but it's really more about the thank you. Some people do events strictly for the public education regarding the charitable organization and its mission. You need to know, if you're doing an awareness event, that awareness events absolutely do not raise money. They strictly raise awareness. And an awareness campaign is extraordinarily important. So for example, at Women's Hospital, where Melissa works, doing awareness around breast cancer is an extraordinarily important thing, especially when they're trying to get the message out about women having mammograms and making sure that that's accessible. So an awareness event is important. It's not going to raise a lot of money. So you have to know that in your mission. And then of course, everybody wants to raise money. So if your primary goal is to raise money, you need to know that, and you need to put methods in place in order to objectives in place in order to reach your goals. So what does that look like from a return on investment perspective? And this is the question that we ask, and this is really where the rubber meets the road. So you'll see at the bottom of the pyramid, which is really flipped. So at the top of the donor pyramid, major gifts or capital campaigns usually cost an organization 5 to 10 cents to raise a dollar. Annual funds typically cost 25 to 30 cents to raise a dollar. And an annual fund might include some direct mail pieces, volunteers making phone calls. As you'll remember from last week, special events typically cost at least 50 cents to raise a dollar. Now, Melissa will probably tell you I had a rule that if we weren't, the hospital had a rule of 50 cents on the dollar. I had a rule of if we don't raise 70 cents on a dollar, we probably don't need to do this event. So it's a benchmark, but I will tell you, if you're spending 70 cents to raise a dollar, you really might want to seriously rethink, is it worth the time and the effort to do that? And this needs to include, this 50 cents to a dollar also needs to include staff time. So when you break out the cost benefit of a particular event, you need to include and equate the hourly rate, if you will, of the person and the team dedicated to do that, and then decide if it's worthwhile to do. And one of the main reasons I wanted the two professional women that I've invited to join us tonight to join us is because they look at these numbers very seriously as they measure the reasons of why they're going to do an event and what the objectives are. So although this sounds negative, I want to temper that. Events are a necessary thing, and they're an extraordinarily important piece of an organization's operation. But you need to understand that they are the least efficient fundraising tool. So face-to-face fundraising is extraordinarily cost-effective and efficient. Direct mail, a little bit more expensive, but also efficient when it comes to staff dollars. Events cost a lot of time and they cost a lot of money. So from an efficiency perspective, they're the least efficient. They also can cause burnout of volunteers and staff. Usually when you have a major event, it is all hands on deck for a period of time. And year after year after year, you need to make sure that that stays fresh, that your volunteers are still encouraged, that your staff stays with you, and they're keeping it fresh and engaged. And it can also spread sponsorships then. So if you have multiple events, more than one or two events for your particular organization, and sometimes, particularly those corporations and foundations, they get donor fatigue pretty fast. So you want to make sure that if you're going to swing the bat, you're hitting the biggest ball that you possibly can, and it's the most effective for the donor or the sponsor. And it might undercut your giving of individual donors. So if somebody comes to your event, for example, and it costs a $100 to get a ticket, and maybe their company is buying a table for $1,000, and they are spending another $1,000 in auction items and that sort of thing. Although it's fantastic, or a wardrobe, you know, they got to buy the dress or rent the tux or whatever to come to your event. they might spend $2,500 and you still have an annual fund to raise money for, and they think they've already given to you in the most meaningful way possible, and you're coming back to them for an annual fund or a major gift. So you've got to be careful not to cannibalize your annual fund or your major gift fundraising when you look at events. Events should enhance those things, not detract from those things. And that, again, is why you have goals and objectives around them. So, considerations. At every point, you need to be asking yourself, what is the objective of the event? And when board members and volunteers say, we should do a ... and whatever that is, we should do a golf tournament, we should do a gala, we should do a, Dancing with the Stars, or whatever the case may be, you need to ask, what is our objective? What do you want the outcome to be? Is it donor acquisition? Is it donor upgrade? Is it donor engagement? And is it donor stewardship? And you need to, as an organization, be extraordinarily clear on the why we are doing it. And until you know the why you are doing an event, it's impossible to set how you're going to measure and evaluate whether or not it was successful. Having a certain number of people may be the evaluation tool. Raising a certain amount of money may be the evaluation tool. But you need to set the consideration and the objectives first so that you can set how are we going to budget. Now, one of the things that I really appreciate about our two speakers tonight is I believe I can speak for the Emerge Center. I know I can speak for Women's, is they operate on what is the no budget theory. And that is all costs of the event will be underwritten or donated. All costs that we can possibly identify will either have a sponsor, will have an underwriter, or will be donated in gifts in kind and or cash. So how do you do that? You make a list of what you need. You match all of the things with all of the needs. So for example, list of needs and matching budgets for underwriting might be, what are our invitations? How much are the invitations and postage? And that costs an amount of money. Do we have a sponsor that can meet that, or an individual that will donate that? Food and beverage, and I put those in one column, but in many cases that could be separated out. What are people going to eat if they come, and can we get it donated? What are they going to drink if they come, and can we get it donated? What decor do we need? What is the venue? What are the awards? If you're handing out awards, can you get those donated? Because trophies and medals and acrylic is expensive. What are the equipments? And when I say equipment, that could be everything from audio visual costs to golf carts. Can you get that donated? And can you get entertainment donated? And if you can't, and you've got to pay for it, the cost of an entertainer might be $5,000. That might be their fee, and that's fantastic, but can you get somebody to underwrite that fee? So make a list of all of the things that you want to do and that you need for the event, just like you would do if you're having an event at your home for like a wedding shower, and then make a budget and see if you can come up with matching sponsorship levels or underwriting levels to handle that. The types of underwriters are just the same as you would have for annual fund. They include corporations, probably heavier in events, corporations, but certainly corporations, individuals, absolutely, believe it or not. Some individuals prefer to sponsor an event. Some don't. Foundations certainly will underwrite an event. Typically a little fewer foundations will underwrite events unless it's for a specific reason or program. And of course, in-kind donations are important. Excuse me, I have to cough. Sorry. Now, underwriters, all, and those who are donating typically want to return in some way, shape, or form for the reasons that they're doing. It's a little bit different than a donor just giving you a donation saying, go do good work. underwriters usually want questions answered like how many people are going to be there, because they might put it in under their marketing expense. They might want, and this is a very tricky thing in fundraising, they may want a list of your attendee names or everybody who bought a ticket. And, you know, since we are driven by the donor bill of rights from the Association of Fundraising Professionals, you need to make real sure that your donors are okay with their names being given. And donors could be just the people buying a ticket. So our ethical principles in fundraising might preclude you, and probably should preclude you, from sharing names. But maybe at the event you could have a fishbowl, if you will, where business cards go in, or people could register to win something at their table. And then it's really the donor's choice. They might want recognition. I want you to flash my name up on the sign. I want my logo on the back of the t-shirt. I want my logo on the ad. But you need to be able to answer the question, where all will their name be printed and their logo be printed, and how many people, how many impressions are they going to get from that, from a marketing perspective? How many people are going to see it? And don't forget about access. Sometimes people will underwrite something if they want access to other individuals. So I know one of the events that Melissa has done, one of the major underwriters said, we want to run the VIP portion before the event. We want to have a VIP room, and we want to invite all of our top level executives and lobbyists and whatever. And we know that this would be a really fun and exciting reason. So they want access to maybe your senior executives or some of your clientele. You again need to really think through, why would somebody want to underwrite an event for you, but what is the quid pro quo, if you will, in response to that? And you need to be really thoughtful about that and think through that before you get into a situation where you're caught kind of empty-handed. Now, why would you want to include your volunteers in fundraising? Well, volunteers are typically really dedicated to your mission. They're more credible. No offense to everybody on the phone, but you're paid to be there, and a volunteer can invite somebody from, and you'll remember, peer-to-peer fundraising is a big deal. So people want to be invited, and if the right person invites them, they walk with the gravitas and the credibility to do that. It also represents you in a different way in the community. They can speak on your behalf. Maybe they're the person that goes on the morning show to talk about it, and you say, gosh, wow, there's the president of XYZ organization sitting next to Shelton at the Emerge Center. Maybe this is something I should pay attention to. They also provide you access to new social networks, and of course, again, that peer-to-peer cultivation and solicitation. It is not unusual for executive directors to have a conversation with volunteers and say, you know, here's a list of invitees. It would be so helpful if you would pick up the phone and personally call one of these 5 people, and invite them to attend, because your reputation and influence could be really powerful. And y'all will remember when we talked in the first session about what volunteers will give you. They'll give you their influence, they'll give you their reputation, they'll give you their resources. Resources are important here. They'll give you their time, and they'll also give you their money. Those first 4 are ways that you can engage people at a deeper level and get them more involved in who you are. And of course, it just expands your scope, depth, knowledge, and connections for others. And most importantly, they can invite others that you probably can't. I've told the story several times that last year, my husband and I did not get invited to an event, and somebody asked us, it was a ticketed event. It got an invitation, and several of our friends were going, and they said, hey, are you going to the, XYZ event? And I looked all pouty and kind of salty and said I wasn't invited. And when I thought about it, I was complaining that I wasn't invited to spend $1,000 to a limited event. Sounds kind of silly, but you know, we felt a little left out, and um, it would be nice to be invited. So people like to be invited, and don't forget the power of that depending on who is doing the inviting. So volunteers remain engaged when they feel valued, when they feel recognized for their contributions, and when they know what is expected of them. So we heard Michael talking last week about making sure you have a plan, making sure that your volunteers have the tools that they need to do their job, and deadlines to be successful. Well, the same applies to events. Giving volunteers the tools that they need, making sure they have electronic versions of, say, the information for sponsorship, making sure that they know the deadlines, making sure that if they're calling a bank, that they know who is calling the other banks in town. So making sure that they remain knowledgeable and part of your team and updated is really important. And frankly, making sure that at the event you say thank you and recognize in a special way every single person who has rolled up their sleeves and helped you. And believe it or not, this is one of the things that people forget the most. I've got to give kudos to both Shelton and Melissa. They do a terrific job of recognizing the people that make events happen. They even, in some cases, wear special name tags that say honored volunteer, and that's a big deal. And it helps you as an organizational leader saying, hey, look, you know, Anne and John and Susie are in this deep with us. Now, from an evaluation perspective, of course, it flows from the original objectives. Do not let yourself have an excuse. Don't rationalize success or failure. Evaluate it based on the goals and objectives that you set previously. You might be wildly successful, but you still need to go back and do an evaluation of what worked really well, what maybe didn't work really well. You might not be successful at all, and that may be because it was out of your control, or 3 other events were the same night, or whatever the case may be. But be rational in that and be practical in the evaluation. But again, you've got to establish that criteria at the front end so that you can actually evaluate it. And after the event, ask yourselves again, why are we doing this event? And more importantly, should we do it again in the future? So some of the criteria for evaluation: did we achieve the stated financial goals? Did it cost us more time? Did it cost us more money than we thought? Did we achieve what I'm going to call our moves management goals, our donor engagement goals? Did we acquire new donors? Did we engage donors? And can we actually pinpoint that? Did we upgrade any donors? You know, maybe somebody was a $5,000 sponsor last year. Were they a $1,000 sponsor this year? That's an upgrade. And did we steward people in the way in which they want to be stewarded? Did we thank them the way they want to be thanked? I'm going to use this example, and I don't mean it to be respectful at all. I received an award about a year ago, and it seemed like a really great thing, and I was honored because of what it was and why they gave it to me. And you know, it was a nice piece of an acrylic, but it seemed like a lovely award. But at the end of the day, it was really about how many seats I could sell and the table numbers that I could sell. And they called all of my friends and family and asked them to put ads in the thing. And at the end of the day, I didn't feel like it was about me at all. It wasn't about something that I had done, or really didn't feel like it was genuine. So when you do stewardship events, make sure that, and you're, highlighting somebody, is it really stewardship or is it a fundraiser? So be careful about that and be thoughtful about that. And honestly, you should be asking those you're honoring or those you're thanking if you thank them in the way that they expected to be thanked, and how do they feel about that, because you will want to continue that if it's successful and not continue that if it's not. But ask for thoughtful feedback. Did you minimize expenses and maximize the revenue? At the end of the day, did it cost you more money than you thought it was going to cost you, or were you able to save more money than you thought? And did you maximize every expense? And be really realistic about that. Don't try to hide anything. Add in the staff time, and make thoughtful decisions. Were the right pool of prospects invited, and did they attend? Did we have the right people in the room? And as you look at your donor pyramid, did we have the right people to feed into our annual fund? Did we have the right people to possibly engage as major gift prospects? So we have the right people to kick off our capital campaign? Are these the people that we're trying to have catalytic contacts and move up our pyramid? Did we communicate how proceeds would be used? I have participated in an event multiple years and stopped writing checks because they're still in the same dilapidated building that they've always been in. And I don't feel like the kids that they're serving are really serving the kids. I really think it's all about the event and the show. And at the end of the day, I don't feel like the money is flowing through. And I have not ever seen a return on impact statement about where the money goes and what they do. So do you communicate that? They may be doing a great job. I've just not seen it or heard about it. And should we do it again? Just because something was wildly successful one time, is it going to be forever? And I think sometimes having great courage to kill an event is an important thing. Everything has a shelf life, and maybe you've done the golf tournament for 25 years and it's the same old golf tournament. It's getting more and more and more expensive. Can you reimagine that in a different way? And I'm going to invite Melissa to talk to you about that. Or should we just kill it and not do it again? And should we change the date, the time, the location? One of the things I think Shelton has done really well is her event is not on top of everybody else's event. They are very off center, if you will, from every other event in town, which makes it a wildly successful event. They don't have a lot of competition. And are you enlisting new chairs and sponsors immediately? Now I'm going to say that again. The day after your event, when you thank them, do you give them first right of refusal and invite them to participate with you again? So what that means is you have the date set for the next year at this year's event, so you can turn around and do that. And the most successful event people know to do that and get them locked in. Now, again, did we have the right ratio of volunteers and staff for the number of participants? Did we have too many, too few? Did they know what they were doing? Did the attendees receive the right level of attention and interest? This is a hard thing at big events. If you have all of those people invited, do they have access to talk to your executive director? Do they have access to talk to maybe some of the principal people in your arena? Are they accessible? Did they get the right level of attention? Are you looking at the list and taking your staff and making sure every single person in the room has at least one contact with somebody on your team, and ask, hey, Anne, how are you? It's so good to see you here. I just wanted to thank you on behalf of the organization. Have they laid eyes on you and on that donor, and have you engaged them? And this is something that I think a lot of people in events overlook. They don't actually talk to the people when they get there. And was there an opportunity for attendees to interact and express their own personal testimony in support of your cause? Do you have a tell me your story opportunity? Are you giving people the opportunity to raise their hand with you and tell you why they're standing in your room? sometimes people will surprise you with why they're there. Was there time for, and this is probably the biggest, I wish I had have highlighted this, following the event, do you have enough time to catalog, reference, record, and file appropriate information gleaned from the volunteers and the staff assigned to the event? So what that means is, did you have people assigned beforehand to have a conversation with everybody at the event and visit with them about what they were doing and why they were there? And did you have a debrief to catalog that information? So Shelton saw Beverly. Beverly said, hey, I love what you're doing here. You know, my nephew has autism. I'd really like to come tour the facility. Oh, that's great. In the heat of the moment, did you capture that information, and do you have the ability to follow it up? Are you actively trying to catalog everything that happened at that event? The best events and the best fundraisers will capture that information and use the next year to move people up that engagement pyramid, if you will. And did the event result in narrowing the prospect pool? Did you move people up the pyramid? Can you absolutely manage that by the fundraising staff and volunteers? Are you making sure that they're in your annual fund pool? Are you making sure that they're in your next major gift event? Now, virtual events, and we're going to talk about this in a moment, but events during trying times. One of the things that I think is really important at the end of the day, the primary goal of an event is to raise awareness. It cannot be your only fundraising mechanism. And this year, we are seeing that bigger than anything. So events raise awareness, and you want to stay in front of people. You want to be front and center, but you're going to have to ask yourself, is this event really necessary? And is it safe? And is it the right thing to do with the population that we serve? Why are we doing this? And can we do it without it this year? And I have been told I am negative about events, and I don't mean to be at all. I think you've got to be raising money and meeting your objectives. But if you have ever wanted to let an event die that has been around for a long time and you don't know why you're doing it, this is your year. This is the year that you can get away with eliminating an event that you have not wanted to do or you don't think is in line with your mission anymore. I give you permission to let it go. And next year you can say, you know, last year we let it go and we're good. You also need to really think through how will this affect donor acquisition if we do or don't do it, and do you have other means to acquire donors, maybe direct mail. By the way, lots of people not doing mail right now. Direct mail is a great alternative. And how will this affect your overall fundraising goals? You might need to reduce your budget. Maybe you save some money in the process, and keep it flexible. You're going to have to plan. And the reality is, at the end of the day, you might need to pivot. You might have to make some hard calls. And I would invite you to consider a virtual event platform. And I'm really interested to hear what Shelton and Melissa say about this. I know they've evaluated a whole lot of these. I know the Junior League is evaluating a lot of these. These happen to be two of my favorite. I will tell you, we don't have a favorite at Carter, but I have worked a lot with both of these organizations. And today you can go to Mobile Cause's website, and they have a event checklist, a virtual event checklist. I don't think it's appropriate for me to send it to you, but I do invite you to go to the Mobile Cause website and download it for free. And it is a terrific checklist. I know Qtago and some of the other platforms. And if I do invite you, for the greater good of the group, if you have a platform that you think is fantastic from a virtual space, please add it in the chat so other people can see it. Now I'm going to run through event online fundraising because most of you know what that is and how to be successful at it. But most importantly, I'm going to re-show you this slide that I showed you the first night. Personalized multi-channel approach. Your online fundraising needs to integrate with all the rest of your core messaging. So your website and social media and your email must integrate with whatever you're doing with mobile phones and apps. It must integrate with your face-to-face meetings. It must integrate with your donor events. It must integrate with any commercials that are coming out. For example, at Woman's has a marketing team to get people to the hospital, but that's got to be symbiotic with what the foundation is doing. Any telemarketing, if you do that in your direct mail, it's got to be strategic. It's got to be consistent. It's got to be integrated, congruent. They've got to align with each other, and it must be intentional. And you've got to use the right channel for the appropriate donor at the appropriate time. Now, how do you do that? Pop up that donor pyramid again. You're looking at prospect intelligence across every mechanism, and it's really that compelling communication that's going to be most appropriate for what you're doing here on the side. And are you having catalytic context, i.e., does it move people down the funnel? And most importantly, every time somebody raises their hand with you, and when I say that, when they click on Facebook, that's a hand raise. When they make a donation online because one of their friends has a birthday party and says, please give to you, are you capturing that intelligence, that behavior? So you've seen this slide before. Your direct mail, your microsite, your letters, your phone, your face to visit, all of this needs to be personalized, needs to be integrated. It also really needs to be integrated with your website, and you need to track this. What interests me most? Just because you build a website doesn't mean they come. Are you giving people opportunities to engage with you and tell donor stories? Remember, at a organization that is fundraising, some organizations have information to push out. Some are just trying to attract donors. So you need to give both options. But if I am a donor attracting a donor, are you talking about the return of the impact of the gifts that you made? Are you telling me compelling stories that I can share? Or are you giving me the opportunity to tell my story? Now, this is stolen from Fundamentals of Fundraising, AFP, the Association of Fundraising, Fundamentals of Fundraising. I'm a master trainer in this, and this is what their book says about e-philanthropy and social networking. Number one, don't become invisible. Building an online brand is essential, but it is every bit as difficult as building relationships. Donors don't come to you. You've got to engage them. It's a two-way communication. It takes know-how and vision. And I can't tell you the number of times I've watched IT people build websites for nonprofit organizations, and it is not, they're beautiful and they're wonderful, but this is a fundraising tool. This is not a technology tool. So those that build the relationships need to be driving the content of those that are building the website. So you can't just farm it out to an outside organization or an IT team. And remember, again, it's all about the donor. Social networking tools have got to enhance your relationship. It's about them. It's not about you. And remember, it's a great way to engage potential donors to tell their story in a much bigger way and platform. And think about their social networks as you do it. Keep savvy donors. You want to stay fresh and you want to stay current. If I go to a website more than 3 times and it hasn't changed, I'm probably not going to come back. You've got to make online giving easy. You've got to make it enjoyable, and you have to make it consistent. Give the donor options and show them how funds are used. And when I say consistent, don't make me fill out 5 different kinds of forms with 5 different kinds of platforms when I want to make a donation with you. One platform across all platforms. So if I'm going to Facebook and I click on you, I need the same platform that I'm going to use if I'm coming online. Integrated into everything. All of your storytelling should be consistent, and the messaging and the branding should be consistent. And the social networking has got to enhance the relationships. Don't forget, ethics and privacy and security are not buzzwords. They're extraordinarily important. So if your donor information is important inside of your database, and it's going to be equally as important on your website. It also takes the internet to build community. So if you don't have the resources to communicate effectively, I invite you to look at some of the free platforms that are out there. Facebook is actually a decent platform to start just with a basic website, and I'm going to air quote that, and things like Survey, Gizmo and Survey Monkey are great tools to survey your donor base, and tools like MailChimp are relatively cost effective, and you can at least see who's opening the content for you. Success online means being very targeted and very consistent. So know what's driving the attention and the services offered. And remember, just like in that donor continuum, e-philanthropy is more than just about the e-money. It's really an enhancement and a complement to all of your other fundraising goals. So what you're putting out there on Facebook, what you're putting out there as an invitation, what you're putting out there in your commercials, if you have the luxury of doing that, and what you're putting out into the universe and any other mechanism needs to be driven and consistent, and that branding has got to be congruent. So really be true to your case for support. Every time you're online, your case for support is the same thing that you raise money for. It's got to have an emotional lead. It's got to be consistent with your mission and vision. It's got to tell a little bit about who you are and what you do, a little bit about the organization, a short explanation of programs, outcomes of proof, impact, show me the stories, tell me the stories every time, and ways to give. It's amazing how often I look at nonprofit organizations and they're reluctant to put a give button on the website. Melissa will tell you a story about redesigning a website where I said, you know, I appreciate 50% of the hospitals in the United States are private, but this one isn't. I need to see a give button at least 3 places on every single website. And that didn't go over really well at first, but you know what? It's a nonprofit organization, and they adjusted. And when they realized how awesome those stories were and that it drove branding, it shifted the culture of the organization. I don't know if y'all can hear that thunderstorm, but it is loud where I am. So the fundraising gold standard, whether it's an event or it's an online donation, depending on the amount, maybe $250, $500, a telephone call the day the gift is received, a thank you letter within 24 hours stays true, given the amount of a gift. Perhaps a personal visit followed by a letter. This includes sponsorships. You might need to go visit face-to-face with these people. And online, it's not just a quick receipt. It should have a thank you tied to that. So don't forget for online events that thanking people is equally as important, because it's all the same money in their pocket. It's equally as important as if they walked into your organization and wrote you a check. So that concludes the training portion. I'm going to ask Melissa and Shelton to hop online, and I want to talk a little bit about these awesome events. I've got some of my favorite pictures from, and this is just as an attendee, y'all, not being formal at all. This is the Emerge Center's event last year. It was a 60s theme. I attended that. Shelton, I'll let you go first, if you don't mind. Tell us a little bit about the Emerge Center and your events and what you did this year and what worked for you.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me. The Emerge Center is an early intervention therapy provider for children with autism and individuals with communication challenges. So our whole mission is to be accessible to all families. So our guiding principle is that we are going to help families regardless of their ability to pay. So our organization has a long legacy of service in the Baton Rouge community. We were originally founded in 1960 as Baton Rouge Speech and Hearing Foundation. And over the years, we've really stepped up and tried to meet the evolving needs of our community. So now, today in 2020, Emerge is really known as the Gulf South's largest provider of therapies for children with autism. So we focus on young children, preschool aged children, so between 18 months to about 5 or 6 years old. Originally, we were focused on that young preschool group, but a few years ago, we started a charter school for children with autism to serve those kids who are in elementary school. So the Emerge Foundation was formed a couple of years ago to provide philanthropic support to both the Emerge Center and the new Emerge School. And so we have 4 events a year. Basically 1 a quarter. But our largest event is our gala, which is traditionally held in May. And each year when we host this gala, we have a theme to it. So our whole brand and our whole mantra is that we're helping kids transform and be catalysts for their development. So Emerge really means more than just our name. It's what we're trying to help these children do. So each year our gala has a different theme. And so we went from one year to Emerge into song, Emerge into dance, Emerge into the journey, and we have these very large-scale musical acts, and our fundraising at the in-person events really focused on a Raise the Paddle opportunity during the course of the evening.
Okay, so for those who don't know what a Raise a Paddle is, tell them what that is. That was news to me. I had never heard that till Melissa told me. I was like, what is that?
Okay, right. So it's a fund the mission. I mean, you know, it's an opportunity for, we have an MC on the stage and he says, okay guys, it's that part of the night. We're all here to support Emerge's mission. I would like to tell you what $5,000 would do for Emerge. And we give a very specific example, and we typically pre-secure the large Raise the Paddle givers. So we don't just hope that someone will give $5,000, but technically they'll raise their paddle, raise their hand, and we'll note that they are giving a $5,000 gift. And then
So you pre-say, hey, Beverly, during the Raise the Paddle, would you be willing to, at that time, say, I'll donate $5,000 or $2,000? Yeah. I always wondered about that.
Well, because at those higher levels, you don't want crickets, right? Like, right. We don't pre like the 1,000, 500, 250. That's not so much of an issue, but it needs to start out strong. And we've been very successful in having, our repeat gala attendees make those Raise the Paddle gifts.
Yeah, that's terrific.
So that was how we used to do it before COVID. So,
yeah, which was huge. Y'all can see this stage. The gentleman, I think this is Stephen Wagasback. He's the president of the Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, very well known base in the community. He's got a wig on. It's a big deal. This was part of the Raise the Paddle, right? And y'all had a huge band during this, right?
We did.
Auditorium. This is the bar outside. This is all the, fun costumes. Okay. So now you got to pivot. It's COVID. What do you do?
Yeah. So in early March, we sort of started seeing the writing on the wall, and being that our event is in May, we pretty much started thinking we're going to have to either delay the event to maybe August. That was like our first ideal scenario. Oh, well, we're just going to delay it a few months. And then of course, when things kept kind of evolving, talk about making a hard call. We had to make a call to tell everyone we're pivoting and we're going to have a virtual event. And when I tell you the fear that I personally had in transitioning over to 100% virtual event, it was pretty robust. And I'm so grateful that the board and our team and everyone around us really rallied, and they gave us that confidence that we could persevere. And
so Shelton, I want to ask you a question. Who ultimately made the decision that, one, you're going to go forward with an event, but two, it's going to be a virtual event? Who has the ultimate, like, okay, we're going to do this?
Well, of course, our CEO, I provided, the advice and the counsel that I had from a fundraising perspective. But at the end of the day, it was our CEO, making the recommendation. We jointly made it to our board. And you have to remember when this was, we were making the call like in April, where
Wow, you're in the thick of it.
everyone just didn't know what was going on. So it actually, because everything was so much more emotional and everyone was just so really kind of wondering what the future was holding, it kind of made it a little bit easier to say, listen, we just have to pause and we have to reinvent ourselves. And so we started doing a ton of research. We started doing research of events in Seattle, because Seattle was sort of the first area of our country that was really impacted by COVID. And, there's a lot of spring fundraisers that were happening actually. So we did a lot of research, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we thought we could adapt to our uses.
Yeah.
What I neglected to mention before is that this year is really important because it's our 60th anniversary.
Oh, I did not get that. Oh,
Okay,
wow.
right.
That's
Okay,
big. Okay.
Yeah, it's huge. So of course we had the best laid plans. We had this huge year-long 60th anniversary celebration and all these different things we were planning, one of which was a huge reunion. We had, decades of families who are deeply grateful for their services that we provide. So we actually were going to host for the first time ever, like a real reunion. It was going to happen on August 15th in a couple days. So not only did we have to pivot our gala, which is the fundraising, we had to then pivot this reunion into a virtual platform.
Gotcha.
The purpose of the reunion, there was a fundraising purpose to it. Obviously, every reunion, you're trying to re-engage and reconnect and bring people back into your fold, but we weren't going to be raising money at the reunion.
Right.
So it was actually two different events that we had to kind of
consolidate.
Consolidate. And we didn't want to get rid of the reunion.
Yeah.
What we decided to do, what you're seeing on your screen, first of all, we came up with a brand. Like, we were very adamant that we had to treat this like any other event. It had to have a clear theme, a clear, branding, graphics, and all of this. So we came up with a Merge Fest because we're in Louisiana and everyone, had missed out on Jazz Fest and all that. So we decided to do a 2-day celebration. So the first day was purely a social media driven communications campaign. Yeah. In that, we were really trying to bring that reunion element to our audiences. So the day, we were posting stories from alums. Of course, we had to teach.
Nice.
So
what the audience may not know is these are some of the staff and doctors and physicians that have been part of your organization. Am I right?
Exactly. So, this was a Zoom call. Like, this is back in, really probably didn't even know how to work Zoom, but together, we put together a really special group of a client who received services, a therapist, and then a pediatrician in our community, and then a pediatric neurologist. And all we had them do, and it was so much fun, they just got on Zoom and they talked like a half hour about, back in the day, how it all looked and the great progress that the young woman has been making. And so I thought it would be so fun, because Zoom back then was very novel, that, we could capture that story and capture the feeling of we were all in this together.
I love that. So your objective was really to just get people more involved on this portion of the night, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we were really just trying to reconnect and remind people of the wonderful impact that we've had. And so on that first day of Emerge Fest on June 26th, it was just a social media blitz.
Yeah. Engagement, tell your story. I love that. I know some of these faces. So this is an extraordinarily well-known physician. This is speech therapist that was with you for 30 years, right? So, this is fun. Okay.
Yeah.
Great decision.
Well,
so for those of you on the call that have alums, remember, they weren't in school before. These are just clients, right? Formal clients. So, if you're the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts, you could do a reunion of sorts. If you're, who are some of your constituents, and this lended itself well for that. That's fun.
It did.
So Melissa could possibly do this with babies in the NICU that have graduated for an NICU reunion, because you can't come in Okay.
Yeah.
I love it.
So that was the first day. And then the second day was really our gala. And so we thought, well, let's have a happy hour. Everyone's going to be at their houses. Let's keep it really casual. We were adamant that we wanted to be as much live as we could be. We had seen a lot of organizations, they would package up like a 30-minute, basically an infomercial, nothing wrong with that, but they would just show that on Facebook as if it was live, like on Facebook Live. But we all thought, we need to, if we're going to go virtual, we have to really be sure that there's this element of what can happen.
Program.
Right. And so on the happy hour night, we created like a 45-minute program. You'll see it right there. Again, lots of stories. Really what I found to be most rewarding is that we really dialed down on our case for giving. And when I figured out exactly how to articulate that digitally, because now that's really what we have to do moving forward.
So y'all will remember the case for giving is what is your who, what, when, where, why, and how much. What are you raising money for? So what? This is what you're raising money for. I love that.
Yeah, it was a good refresher because with events, sometimes there's so much going on with so many different components.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you have to be making your case. You have to encourage people to give. And for us, a virtual platform, there isn't all of the AV. I mean, there's not all of that other stress of a big, large event.
Right.
A virtual event. So I was really pleased at how we kind of crystallized everything.
I love that.
So before we had the event, I will tell you, we got those pre-commitments. We did not take anything for granted. So we have a host committee that's part of our gala. And what that is, it's really a peer-to-peer fundraising activity in that a lot of our board members, a lot of our close friends, we invite them to be on our host committee for the gala, and they are then able to invite a couple to come with them. And that's really worked well for us.
Yeah.
Beverly was mentioning about, acquiring new donors. There's nothing better than someone saying, listen, I really believe in Emerge. I'd love for you to be my host at our upcoming gala. So we still use those host committee people really in a completely different way this year. We said, you're on our host committee and we appreciate it. We hope you'll stick with us, even if it is an event. We hope you will encourage your friends to give. So as much as it became it really just became a complete online peer-to-peer play, if you will. And the good news also moving into that event is we had our host committee secured. We had our sponsors secured. So we were in a really good position. And luckily,
because you were you had to pivot really fast. So you would have done a lot of the pre-work. I think we've locked up a little bit. Shelton, you're locked up on us. Okay, y'all, there's a terrible thunderstorm. So until we get Shelton back, Melissa, are you with us?
I am.
So this is Melissa Curry, and Melissa didn't pick these pictures. I did. Melissa, tell us about you. Tell us who you are, what you do, and tell us about what's happening at Women's Hospital.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me, Beverly. And I miss you at Women's.
I miss you
I worked
too.
with Beverly for several years, and she transformed our event and made it to what it is now, which she had the vision, which she talked about vision. She had the vision to move the event forward. We were stagnant. It was one of those events that was just silent auction, chef showcase. We had maybe 300 people. We had this third-party event, and that is what is so great about Best Breast Cancer, which is our main fundraising gala. That event, Beverly transformed into it was a third-party event that one of our volunteers put on for Women's, raised maybe $3,500, just donated a check for our mammography coaches.
So let me explain, Melissa, I'm going to interrupt you because everybody might not know what a third-party special event is, and I didn't talk about this. A third-party special event is when somebody says, I'm going to go raise money on behalf of the organization. I'm going to go, sell widgets, and I'm going to do it on behalf, and I come to you and I donate. I'm going to collect all the money, and I'm going to give you that check. So an example of that might be Kendra Scott does a sells jewelry, and it's a marketing night for anybody that comes in here tonight. 20% is going to come back to Woman's, or it could be, I don't know, I'm going to do a wine stroll around my neighborhood and everybody puts up $100 and for my birthday, and we're gonna use Woman's brand and they give a check back. So this was a third party special event, not something that was on staff time or expense for the organization. Did I get that right, Melissa?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we have Shelton. Are you back?
Shelton, are you back? You froze up on us.
Shelton. Oh. I don't
Okay.
hear her.
Hopefully she'll be back.
So
Okay.
we had a stale event, as Beverly was saying. We know when we need to move forward. She saw this opportunity, this bra art fashion show that one of our volunteers had put on to benefit Women's and the mammography coaches. And the mammography coaches provide mammograms, screening mammograms to women across now 33 parishes, where when Beverly, when you were there, it was 21 parishes.
That's
around
amazing.
for women who lack insurance or women who have insurance and just are not able to get to the hospital, just have no transportation. So we have now 2 coaches, which Beverly helped to purchase. Beverly and our events have helped to purchase that second coach, which is why we can screen more women, travel more miles, and save more lives. So this bus breast cancer event evolved from a third-party event. That's why third-party events are so important, and we're so grateful for all of our donors who do put these on that benefit Women's Hospital. So we just took over the third-party event and decided to make it our own. And what it started out as was a bra art fashion show to support the mammography coaches of Women's Hospital. So when we took it over, our goal was to have breast cancer survivors walk the runway in these beautiful pieces of art that local artists have designed for the models and breast cancer survivors. But it was very difficult to find people who wanted to wear the bras who were breast cancer survivors. So from, I guess, I think we started in 2014 to 20, now we have been able, the last 2 years, we have had at least 25 all breast cancer survivor models walk the runway in these artist creations. And we went from an event, Pink on the Plaza, that was a stale event of 250 to 300 people, to an event, can you hear me, Beverly? To an event that's 1,200 people in a regular year.
It's amazing.
So,
and it looks like a New York fashion show.
It does. We ask local artists to design bras for our breast cancer survivors to model. We start planning in January. I form a volunteer committee, and it's, we've had some of our volunteers have been with us since the very beginning. We kicked off in January of 2020, at the end of January, to begin planning for a September event. And we had 52 volunteers for our first kickoff meeting, which is amazing.
I have to tell you, Melissa does the most extraordinary job of managing and engaging volunteers of anybody I have ever met. So you heard that? She's got over 50 volunteers, and all of those volunteers are passionate about the mission, and all of them have an opinion. So it's a lot of ego management.
So I have I recruit my leadership early, probably immediately following the event. As Beverly suggested, you want to get your leadership in place early, form your volunteer committee early. And I couldn't do it without the ladies that help me every year. It is key. If you can find a group of ladies and they have asked their friends to join, that is what is so important with these community volunteers, the connections that they have. And where, when we were raising, a few $1,000s, and now we're raising $400,000 at our
Wait,
event.
say that again.
So we were raising a few $1,000s. We didn't sell really a whole lot of tickets. We gave out tickets, and now we're raising $400,000.
That's
with our
extraordinary.
last year's.
And I think the first year it was right at 70, maybe 80,
Right.
and now it's 400.
In
And
2014.
y'all will remember that zero-based budgeting, get everything donated. You do a lot of that.
We do. We set our budget early. As most of you know, you have to have a budget of, revenue. Think of new ways every year. You have to change up the event every year, find new ways to increase your revenue, because every year the expenses go up. But the key is to find those partners, those sponsors who are able to donate. Donate the space primarily is a key part, and the alcohol and the food, and we have a chef showcase, and we have a huge silent auction. All the pieces just come together. So we had our kickoff meeting in January, and then February, March is when COVID hit, and I think had a meeting scheduled in March that we had to cancel. And that is when we were deciding what to do. And we had, our event went until the end of September. So we had plenty of time. We had not secured even our underwriting sponsors yet, because we normally secure those at the end of January, February. So we had no sponsors. We had to decide, are we going to make this a virtual? And as Shelton, congratulations to Shelton. They did such an amazing job with their event this year. I was so proud of them. And I've heard it was super successful. We looked into all of those virtual events, and we did research. We looked at, New York had been in the middle of COVID, and there were a number of events at hospitals. I was looking at hospital events that we researched and how they transform their walks into virtual events. And our event is so unique that there was no way that I felt that I could do what these breast cancer survivors, what they've been through, and we're asking them to walk the runway, and they are so proud to be a part of this event now, that I could not put them on a screen. It just would not have had the same emotional connection as it would in person. So we really, mid-March, we were discussing with our board, our volunteer committee leadership, that we all decided we were not going to have a virtual event for this particular event. It just would not have had the same impact. So we decided early on, and we started planning with our marketing team on how we can do this. What can we do? And we know we're not going to raise $400,000, but we wanted Baton Rouge was hit so hard through this pandemic, and our restaurants, who are some of our big donors, and our sponsors and our local businesses. We have 200 auction items from local businesses. Just about every store in Baton Rouge gets our auction. How can we support these people that have given to us for so many years? So we really wanted to drive business to them. We wanted to keep best breast cancer alive this year, because we can't do the whole event. And we wanted to also create awareness of the mammography's coaches benefit and how many women it serves each year, and for women to go out and get their mammogram. So we decided to do this Bust Out in 2020 campaign, which is a little different. We're asking all of our donors and our friends and our stores and our boutiques and restaurants to bust out and design a bra and display it in their store or business, and promote it, and ask for people to vote on their favorite. So, and it is already, we just launched, our mailer hasn't even gone out, but we've already have, I think, 16 people signed up. We also have our Pink Partner sponsors that are, I think we're at 36,000 today.
That's amazing.
already.
So I want to make sure I understand. So if I am ABC Corporation in Baton Rouge, my team at my company would make a bra, and we would advertise it, and we'd invite people to vote for our bra in our store. So you're
Right.
kind of taking it out to the masses, huh?
Right.
That's
right.
so great.
And each vote is $1 donation. And I know that's not where we're going to make the money, but it's going to drive people to those stores that have supported us, and restaurants. And we're promoting them on our social media. It's going to be a huge social media campaign basically through the month of October. We're starting our kickoff is when our event was originally scheduled on September 24th through the end of October during Breast Cancer Awareness
So
Month.
you're going to have an extended event. So you've
Yes.
extended it over a period of time. So instead of one night in one room, you're across Baton Rouge and surrounding
We
areas.
hope. And
That's
so
terrific.
we have corporate partners, people that pledge their support for multiple years. And so we started there and just said, will you support our mission? The coach we still have to provide mammograms. These coaches of course they weren't on the road during COVID, but now they're even more important because these mammography coaches are less contact, so people feel safer on going to get their mammogram on the coaches, and it's even more important, and they wouldn't be here without this event and grants that we receive for these coaches. So we knew how important it was. So all of our sponsors, we've been reaching out, and they have committed to supporting the cause. And I mean, it's not going to be like a normal event. We're going to give them as much recognition as we can through social media and website and that kind of thing, and email and employee newsletters. But I think it'll be, I'm encouraged by how the community, we've had new donors come and say, how can I be a part of this? I'll give you $1,000. We're not having levels. We're just, with our regular event, we have from 12,000 down to 500, and this is just $1,000 or more. Yeah. I had someone yesterday say, we're going to support you with $5,000, and we're going to also do a bra and host it in their plastic surgery office. So
that's so terrific. Well, what an exciting time. I want to invite Shelton, y'all. There is once again this week, a terrible thunderstorm here in Baton Rouge, and Shelton's electricity got knocked out, but she's rejoined us on the phone. So thanks for sticking in there with us. I'm going to invite people to ask questions in the chat, but I'd like to just have a conversation with Melissa and Shelton, and really how are you doing, and how are your teams thinking through things like, okay, we're not going to raise $400,000 this year. How are you adjusting your budget? How are you adjusting your managing the expectations maybe of your board? And Shelton, you chime in too. I'll start with Melissa. Shelton, if you can hear me, chime in.
Well, Beverly knows that I am super goal oriented, and I always have to exceed our revenue goal for every event that we do. And we're so fortunate in all of our wonderful donors, and we have our event costs, and I'm super proud of this, between 9 to 15 cents on the dollar, which most events are at least 50 cents.
Did y'all hear that? Say that again, Melissa.
Between 9 and 15 cents on the dollar since this event started.
And that includes your salary, staff time, volunteer, and all of that, doesn't it?
And all expenses, yeah. So now I lost my train of thought, Beverly.
I'm sorry, I keep doing that. So how are y'all managing the expectation inside the organization about the revenue that may or may not come in with this?
So we definitely worked with our board, and we did set a goal. I mean, we're not going to raise, our goal, was 300,000 for this year. We know we're not going to raise that. We set a much more conservative goal, and we considered these sponsors. We raised 200,000 last year in just sponsorship alone, and so we figured maybe we'll raise half of that. If we're not going to raise a whole lot on the donate vote part of it, but it will drive people to our businesses that we love and have given to us, and we'll hopefully create awareness of our coaches and the good that Women's does in our community.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's shifted a little bit from a fundraising donor acquisition, because y'all track every ticket sale. Y'all are gaining new friends as you do. I know that you track all of that information to more of a stewardship event, which seems like a really nice way to pivot. Yeah, and awareness.
Right. And that's we're just hoping for the best. That's
Yeah.
what we have decided and we're comfortable with. And I think it's going to be successful. And I think we will meet our goal this year. We just have to adjust our budget a little bit.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I see Shelton. Welcome back. I told the team that we're in a terrible storm. Thanks for sticking with us. Shelton, the question is, how have you all managed the expectation of your board and worked as a team to really talk about, gosh, did you raise the amount of money that you normally do? Have you had to adjust? Talk to us about how you evaluated all that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're very realistic around here. I have always, from the very beginning of COVID, really tried to communicate as much as I could all the time to the boards to tell them we're going to do everything we can. We're going to be as creative as we can. And they've really been supportive. And I think because so many of them are in the business community, they're hearing from their own businesses the challenges of this time. So when we talk about, oh, we might not have sponsors or we might not have this or that, they're all living it too. So what I've done with my team is, I've always tried to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then the light that I see in my team is that we have just become very nimble, very creative.
Yeah.
And not that we weren't before, but we were kind of following like a fundraising plan and that's out the window.
Yeah.
So it's like any idea is a good idea. Let's pursue it. Let's see if it works. If we might have to turn around and come back, but I want to always show that we are doing everything we can and we're trying new things.
Yeah.
And when we try new things, you don't know how it's going to be received, but you have to try. So, I mean, the one thing that I think is most concerning is that you walk in one day and this will be your plan, and then the next 2 hours that's not your plan anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't deal well with that, I know. So for me it's like trying not to get the team in a funk. We're just all trying to just day to day kind of make the best of what we can.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I want to talk and ask Melissa, and then I'll pivot to Shelton. One of the things that we have talked about on these calls is corporations and foundations, and really being in relationship with people. Right now at this time, it's about the relationship. How have particularly corporations and maybe foundations, if you deal with them, reacted to the, hey, give us $10,000 and sponsor this event. Would you double down and just go operational this year, or shift to that? We can't give you all the things that we did in the past. How has that largely been received?
So when we were forced to start working from home March 16th or whatever date that was, we immediately, the first thing I did was start writing handwritten notes to every single donor, checking, letting them know what's going on at Women's, what we're doing to stay safe, and making sure their families are safe and healthy. So I started there, and I think I wrote probably 150 handwritten notes to my donors that I have personal relationships with. Mm-hmm. And then once we got a little further into, I guess maybe April-ish, I think I started to just make phone calls, like, how are you doing? That kind of things, just staying in touch with them. And then once, I guess, I felt comfortable that maybe we were in a space, like, we're almost out of this. We thought we were almost out of this. And this is what we made the decision to bust out for 2020 and ask the community to join us and be a part of Us Breast Cancer in this way. It has been amazing how the response of business owners, restaurants who've been hit the hardest, or they have been the most excited. Everyone is just ready to get out, bust out, and do something different and do something to help the greater good. And I think the response has been unbelievable. And, I pick up the phone and just say, my people that I talk to all the time, would you please, support us this year in this way? It looks a lot different, and they've been so responsive. We're so grateful for our friends.
That's so great. How about you, Shelton? You were a little closer to the timeline and the fire of this in the beginning. How was that reaction? And I think somewhere in And the barometer
Yeah.
is helpful.
Yeah, well, I think where we're going with a lot of the companies that give to our events, which many of these events are going to be a pause for the rest of the year, we're actually having conversations with them, and we're just saying, listen, you gave to us in 19 for this particular activity or this particular event, you know, would you consider just making just a general operating gift? And you know, some companies are in a position to do that and some are not. You know, and you say this a lot, Beverly, the people who will surprise you, and others that will completely disappoint you, that you didn't have any clue.
Yeah.
And that's what we're finding. And some of our long-standing supporters, they are devastated that they can't help us. And those are hard conversations because they feel guilty. I'm thinking, wow, this may not have been a good time. But the bottom line that I've learned, there's never going to be a good time right now. Like, you just will never know what one company or what one person is feeling, or is someone have COVID in their family. So you, like, for a while there at the very beginning, our whole team, we kind of went in the bunker and we were like, oh my gosh, we shouldn't even be talking about fundraising. This is so inappropriate. And finally I woke up and I was like, we have got to remain relevant. We have to connect with our donors. We have to make sure that the community knows of their role in our mission. And you know, there are conversations that are easier than others, I will tell you. But that's basically where we're going with some of these corporate sponsors, is we're looking toward end of the year fundraising, really. To be honest, we're saying, you know, help us get to the end of the year.
Ah, that's terrific. Well, I think both of you said it, and I really want to highlight two pieces of the conversation. Both of you stay in constant relationship with the people that you work with. So I know Melissa's writing notes, she's having conversations. It's not a once a year conversation and we're coming back to the well. It's a constant back and forth. And Shelton, I know you do the same, because I have been a donor with your organization in a different way. I know that is very relationship oriented. So I want everybody on the call to remember, fundraising at its core is about relationship with people, even if it's hard conversation. The other thing that I think I want to be really specific about is y'all both talked about mission, and Melissa said it, you know, breast cancer doesn't stop. People still have to get their mammograms. Cancer screenings are still important, and they've shifted, which is fascinating. I know I'm not going to the hospital, but you're giving them an alternative option, so it's a little twist on maybe the thought process. And autism doesn't stop. You still gotta visit. And so hyper focusing your events around what is your case for support might be a added bonus. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but those two things have really, I've heard that clearly with people.
Yeah, I mean, I think now more than ever, I mean, everyone uses that phrase now, but it truly is the case. I mean, we're all hurt. Yeah, the case for the support. And I think it's really been a good activity for us, as I said before, to really drill down on how we're making this case.
Yeah. So one of the questions that somebody sent me privately, so we're aware of a few organizations that have shifted to virtual events, or have shifted to online events, or canceled altogether, and they've gotten really negative feedback, maybe from vendors that, you know, that they work with, or you know, who rely heavily on the opportunity to get in front of people. Have either of you faced any negative feedback from either volunteers or constituents, and how have you reacted to that?
Beverly, I do want to say this, I have such a close relationship with my volunteers. So we meet monthly, sometimes twice monthly. So we met in January for our kickoff, had a great kickoff, huge crowd. And so we haven't had a general meeting with those 50 or so people again. We have met just with our chairs, which is a 15 or so people, but it's on Zoom is it's very difficult to motivate volunteers on Zoom. People are afraid to say anything because they don't want to interrupt someone else who's talking. So that is
like this.
biggest challenge, is to try to motivate my volunteers, and they are having a hard time wrapping their head around this because they are so passionate about the original event and how we can encourage them, and I rely heavily on my volunteers because they're amazing and they have connections all across Baton Rouge. And so they still are real hesitant and not super on board yet, but we're having a face-to-face meeting and every single person has agreed. We're going to the merchant and have drinks, and they are so happy. We're going to sit outside and social distance, and
Nice.
they're all coming. And I think that is the biggest challenge. I mean, I've kind of felt alone during these last several months without my people, because they are my people who do everything. And a lot of them are breast cancer survivors, and they're the ones making the hard ask, and their people, all their connections say yes. It's different coming from a breast cancer survivor volunteer than coming from me.
It is.
So that's been a big challenge for me, which I'm getting there. So I'm hoping Tuesday we will have a little shift and move forward a little bit further.
And I want to honor what you said. Your people are your people. I mean, I think those of us who do this work for a living, we don't do it clearly for the money. We do it because of the mission, and we're passionate about the people that we see and we work with, because it's about changing lives. So honoring yourselves and your team, and that this is hard. This Zoom world is hard when you can't be in front of the people that motivate you to get up to go to work every day. That's a big deal. And events are a piece of that, but it's really about the engagement of the volunteers. And if you're in the event space, that's a big deal. Shelton, anything that we didn't get to on your event that you want to talk about that really worked well, or that you would be like, don't do this, this is terrible?
Well, I don't know if you guys talked about like the communications and the marketing side, but like with a virtual event, that is like so important. I mean, I felt like if we didn't really talk about this event and use all of our different volunteers, whether those board members, our families, our parent teacher organization, we have all these different groups of people and stakeholders who want to help us. And we were very direct with them. We said, this is a very unique year. We're doing this very special type of event. Here is exactly how you can help us. I mean, it was like a toolkit.
So a toolkit is huge, right?
Yeah. And we were like, let's make it easy for them, and let's make sure that they can, it was all about social media. And so for a lot of people, again, when they're at their houses, they can do that kind of thing. So for us, it was as much about fundraising as it was about getting the word out that we were having this event and how people could get involved. That was really important.
I love a toolkit. And now that I've moved more into board volunteer roles, I'm a snob about it because I watched what Melissa did for such a long time. Melissa, can you talk a little bit about how you prepare for a meeting with volunteers and the tools that you give them? I know you do scripts and electronic resources and things like that. Can you talk about some of that?
I do a lot of hand holding because I love my people so much. My chair, I always do talking points and a script, for kickoffs and the first early meetings, especially if it's a new chair. We have an agenda that we follow. We always engage all the volunteers. Why is it important for you to be a part of this event at the first kickoff meeting? So we kind of know where they are and why it's important to them, and maybe what areas they want to help work on for the event.
Yeah. Okay. So I love the thought of a toolkit, a checklist, and
a little
some
folder with their name. They love the folders and the binders and to make them feel special.
Yeah. And I think it brings some weight to what you're asking them to do. I mean, the junior league might be one of the the foremost best trainers of leadership on the planet, and it's give everybody the tools that they need, and agendas and timelines and deadlines. And it's not surprising that you're a sustainer in that organization.
And they train me to be a good volunteer. And that's
But
where
it sets an expectation for people, wouldn't you say? It's like, oh,
I give
this
sample
is a job.
emails for auction donations, sample scripts, sample sponsorship ask emails. And with this new campaign, they're like, help me, how do I ask them to design a bra that's so crazy? They don't want to do that. They don't have time.
Yeah.
And so I just send them as much information as I can, and they can customize it or however they want to use it. And then all the handouts, the sponsorship, the links, watch this video, that, what the impact is and that kind of thing.
And do you put a lot of that information on your website for volunteers to grab as well?
Well, I really email it all to them.
Okay.
But yes, everything's on our website where they can link for anyone that they're reaching out to, and just let them send a link and they can fill out all the forms.
So Shelton, I know you prepare your volunteers very similarly. How do you handle the after the fact? What is the cleanup? What is the evaluation? What is the process? As you've pivoted, is that a word, pivoted, as you move?
Right. Yeah.
No.
I mean, it first starts with a very genuine thank you. I mean, that's the first thing we always do with anyone who has helped us and partnered with us, is to make sure that they understand the gratitude that we have for them for helping us. Yeah. And we've done a lot of different things. We've had one-on-one meetings with them to get their feedback, and a lot of them are on our board, so they're giving feedback a lot all the time. So that's really helpful. Yeah. In some cases, we've done surveys, if it's a broader group of people, to get their feedback. And, getting feedback sometimes is tough because they'll be brutally honest, and you want them to be honest because you want to improve the event. So the tough part is, not taking it personally and knowing that they want this event to improve and they want it to get better. And how do you take that feedback and make the changes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Beverly, do you see we have a question in the chat? It's related to one of your early slides when you're deciding whether or not you should continue an event. So it would be nice to hear everybody.
Oh, how do you decide if you continue an event? And the question is, how many should you have on your initial list of 5 before you kill it? I'm gonna pull back up my screen because I don't want to misspeak. Now, remember that when you're looking at an event, that at the very beginning, you want to make sure that your objectives state really why are you doing that. And on here, I don't think you can do more than really 2 of these really successfully. So you're either looking for donor acquisition and engagement. So I'm gonna, and this may have changed with Bust Breast Cancer, but I know at first when we were really changing that event and we dropped this third-party special event bra art fashion show inside of this gala, the thought process was, can we acquire new donors? So this was a kind of a big fun event, and can we get as many people in the door as possible? And fundraising was a piece of that. There's a 50% rule at the hospital. You have to raise no less than 50 cents on a dollar, but donor acquisition was a big piece, and the donor engagement was another major piece, because we had these volunteers that had been with the hospital for a very long time, and we wanted to keep their engagement but kind of twist that in a different way. And those 2 things were really important. That may have shifted over time, but it also brought tremendous awareness to mammograms. At first, that wasn't the initial intent. I mean, you always want early detection is a big deal, but it's really taken a life of its own on the awareness and through people identification of their story. So of the why conduct, I think you can do 2 really successfully, maybe touch on 3, but when you try and do everything for everyone, it becomes a problem. So let me give this example. Breast cancer, I am doubtful would ever be donor acquisition, donor engagement, and a thank you event for all of the donors that, high level thank you event. Those things are split out. A thank you event is something different. Now, thanking people at an event is different than here's this $10,000 donor and we're going to have a nice recognition. Those are separate. So, if I'm understanding that, what are you ladies' thoughts on this? Can you do more than 2 of these successfully? Have you been successful at that?
Well, tell me, I'm confused about the question.
Okay, so the question was, how many, before you decide to cut of these, do you have to check off before you kill it? I think I want to bring clarity. If you're going to do an event, it's really probably going to only serve maybe 2 of these things, but you have to have clarity around what that is.
Yeah. Well, we're in the process right now of deciding about an event this fall. And I'll be really honest. I mean, when it goes back to when you're talking about having as much underwritten of your expenses, I mean, in this day and age and where we are, it's, you have to be really thoughtful. Are you going to be able to raise enough over and above your expenses for the event to just make sense?
Yeah.
And, that's kind of unfortunately, where a lot of decisions are being made right now because of the environment. So that's kind of one angle to it. We have separate donor stewardship events entirely. Those are 100%. There's no ask. There's nothing. It's just to our leadership donors.
Straight up, thank you.
Yeah.
Melissa's nodding.
We do the same thing.
Yeah, and you split yours, I think, Melissa. Don't you do the people who are donating time into a thank you, and then you have a donor? Thank you.
We do our leadership donors, which are $1,000 and up, recognize them in a special event at the end of the year or beginning of the next year after that fiscal year is ended. And then we try to recognize those volunteers annually as well.
And the volunteer recognition is very rah-rah, fun.
Yes.
Yay, thank you. So somebody asked here, do you consider volunteers who do not give you money to be donors? Yes.
Absolutely. And I have a lot of volunteers that are not financially able to give, but they give their time and they are hustling and they are on the road. And one in particular volunteers at the hospital in imaging. And then she picks up, she likes a hard copy. She doesn't like emailing and wants to do face-to-face. And she's at high risk for COVID, and she's going to PF Chang's and Bonefish and hitting all the stores.
Yeah.
So yes, but she doesn't give a financial contribution, but she gives her time, and which is so
generally you recognize those who give you time and you recognize them, and then you have a threshold, a stewardship threshold, usually leadership gifts, and in an annual fund maybe $1,000 and above, and that's about access. Generally those thank yous are about access, so it's maybe at the CEO's home or they're visiting with high level people in the community, and that's really an exclusive just thank you, no ask. And I think, Shelton, I'm seeing you nod as well.
I do want to add, Beverly, and you are familiar with our golf tournament, the Women's Victory Open, which we were in it, I guess, the 22nd year. It was an outdoor tournament, and outdoor tournaments are so time consuming. They are very successful events, but the cost per dollar is super high for the amount raised. We had an outdoor event for 22 years. It was rained out first time in 22 years, a couple of years ago. So the next year and the event was declining in revenue each year, that we were having less and less people sponsor, less and less people take teams. So we had to transform that event and figure out what are we going to do with this. I was ready to be done with the event. It had run its course. 22 years for an event is way, I had never even heard of an event going on for that long. So we moved it to Topgolf and had a little bit lower expectation of revenue, which you have a much lower revenue for those type of events. There's not as many opportunities for sponsorship, and you have a very limited capacity. So we moved it to Topgolf, and we met our goal. It wasn't super, high or anything, but the time and the convenience and the volunteer time, I mean, it was so worth it. So we said, we're going to do this for a couple of years. She was asking, how long do you do an event? I think before you nix it, I say if it's under 50 cents on the dollar and it's still raising money. I mean, I hated to give away $150,000 and just end it, but then the amount of time spent, my time, volunteer time, spent trying to organize that type of event, was it worth it? So we had to consider that a couple of years ago. So we're planning on having that event. Was scheduled in April, and we're supposed to have it November 5th. Yeah. And because
it's not golf, I'm gonna have a team this year. I can't play golf, so I'm a new
So we're planning on having it, but we were going to give it 3 years, and after that, see how it goes at Topgolf. We're going to give it 3 years, and then next it.
Shelton, I know you were previously at an organization that had a huge event with a whole lot of people that was very expensive, lots of return, that, if my memory serves, y'all said no matter how big it is, we're going to change and shift gears. Would you mind talking about that a little bit, the thought process in that?
Well, I think you're speaking of the Fiesta.
Yeah.
At Our Lady Lake, right. I mean, I was not involved in the events at that time. I was more on the capital campaign and the major gift side. But I mean, that event, it was a ton of work, and there was a lot of support for that event, which was great. And the focus of the fundraising was on the new children's hospital. And so now the children's hospital is built, you do kind of have to rethink, where else are you going to be raising money for within the hospital? What is going to inspire people to do, to give? And I know this year, the Children's Hospital, they went virtual, with their event that was taking place this earlier in June. So, I mean, I think everyone here in this community is being, as I said, is being creative, is trying to figure out what is the best way for their donors and for their community to bring everybody together. Yeah. And I think I can speak probably for across, even in Lake Charles. I mean, just what Melissa was saying, I mean, people are still dedicated to your mission, and they want to express their dedication, and they want to express their gratitude for us and being in here. That takes a form in a lot of different ways at this time. It may not translate into a donation. It could be a very meaningful, some other way they can contribute to your organization.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
The last question that really segues into that.
Yeah, this is a big one, and I want to be real cognizant of time, but I think this is such an important question. I want to answer it. If sustaining an event and considering it to be a virtual experience this year, any suggestions to maintain the event branding while recognizing the event is different than in the years past? I think both of you did a really beautiful job, but do you have any concerns about returning it to how it used to be and that branding piece of it, assuming that you would do it again? Shelton, you first, and then Melissa, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, I think this Emerge event had so much branding around it that I'm hopeful that, whatever it looks like next year, and we're trying to determine that right now, I'm really hopeful that it'll have that same cachet, it'll draw the same types of supporters in. All you can do is talk about your mission and make your case and be thoughtful about it. And, if we don't acquire as many donors as we wanted, or if we don't have as many new donors as we anticipated, those are going to be considerations. We were very fortunate because we were virtual this year. We actually secured like 52 new donors. Who knew?
Congratulations on that event.
That's
Well,
good.
thank you. And I think that was the benefit of virtual, is because we had donors from like all around the country, because
Yeah.
that's what opened it up, because the gala was an expensive ticket and people had to get dressed up and it was a certain
Got
kind
to
of
get my costume. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was more like, hey, anybody can participate. We brought the giving levels down. And so it kind of makes you feel like, okay, we can widen our tent a little bit.
I love that. So the geographic reach changed for you. How about you, Melissa? Any concerns about the branding, or, if this is,
This
bring it
year
back?
was, we were kind of considering this in our awareness year. Our branding is very similar. We're busting out in 2020, but it's still Best Breast Cancer. I hope we will be able to return to where we were. We still have our artists and models secured for next year. And they are so looking forward, even through all of this, and their immune systems are compromised. I mean, they were still all ready to go, but we just, before we canceled, they're all ready for next year. So I'm hoping that we can move forward and keep the event as it was. If not, we'll have to figure it out what's next.
Well, I am so grateful to have friends and colleagues that are so amazing in the space that I can say, hey, join us in a whole nother city and town. And you two are professionals and just the best of the best. So a round of applause, everybody, for Melissa and Shelton. Thank you both for joining us this evening. I invite everyone on the call to look at the Emerge Center in Baton Rouge on their website and look at their mission, look at the Foundation for Women's Hospital, all of Melissa's storytelling and the integration of communication, as we talked about, for both of these organizations is pretty extraordinary. The storytelling across the board, and I really invite you to do that. I think you'll get a lot of ideas. Lauren, Sarah, what a gift it has been to be with your community for the last 5 weeks. On behalf of Carter Global, thank you for giving us the opportunity to just spend such wonderful time with everybody on the call. I'm so impressed that everybody came for 5 weeks. It's so impressive. This is being recorded. We'll stop the recording here in a second, and it'll be available, if I'm not mistaken, on the Junior League website and on the Community Foundation's website. So many blessings, and thank you both on behalf of both of your organizations. As you know, I'm a huge fan of the Junior League, and I'm a huge fan of Community Foundation. So it's been a lot of fun. So thanks for everybody's time and attention.
Thank you. Please feel free to reach out to us too if you have any questions.
That's awesome. Well, we several positive comments coming in on the chat right now. And for you all to know, I mean, we have nonprofit leaders as well as board members, both that have participated. So you really did make a big impact by sharing your stories and your real life examples that we can help implement in different ways in Southwest Louisiana. So,
Sarah, I want to say one last thing. If anybody is considering acquiring their certified fundraising executive certification, these slideshows, which I am trusting that you do not share and or rebrand, but these slideshows and these 2-hour sessions absolutely count for 2-hour educational sessions towards your certified chief, what is it? CFRE, Certified Fundraising Executive certification. And if you need my credentials, we're happy to share those, or you can find them on the Carter website. So I am a master trainer, so you can use that. And I invite you to invest in yourselves and the profession, those of you that do this for a living.
Good, thank you. Lauren, do you want anything from you?
I wanted to say thanks to everyone. I'm sad that our 5 weeks are ending. We need more topics. I don't know what I'm going to do on Thursdays now.
Well,
We'll
really
work
on that note, we will send one more survey tomorrow, and we appreciate people giving us your feedback of your big takeaways and what you want to work with your board on achieving to help continue your missions. But we'll also ask a question in this next survey about what other kind of training would be valuable for you or professional development opportunities, so that we can see what else we can do in the future, because we are all about elevating philanthropy in Southwest Louisiana. And so whatever we can do to help provide that, we would like to know. So, so look for a survey coming soon, and thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Good
Thank
luck.
you, friends.
Okay,
I really
bye.
appreciate your time. Bye-bye.